The wind screamed through the empty valley like something alive, carving invisible lines across the frozen dirt road. Under the pale light of an endless Alaskan dawn, a man in his late 30s stood beside a rusted van, its windows clouded with time, its wheels half buried in frost. He had paid $80 for it, cash counted with trembling fingers at a gas station 200 miles south. What he didn't know, what no one could have known, was that this van was the first breadcrumb in a mystery buried for decades beneath layers of ice and silence. When he pulled open the driver's door, the sound was a shriek, metal protesting years of neglect. Inside, the air smelled of mildew and something older, something faintly sweet like decayed pine. A torn map clung to the dashboard with brittle tape. He brushed the dust away and saw a red circle drawn around a spot deep in Denali's wilderness. No town, no road, just a number, 73. He frowned, wondering if it was a highway, a coordinate, or a warning. The cold gnawed through his gloves as he turned the key. The engine coughed once, then died. But from the back something rattled, not metal, but wood. He froze. A faint thud came again, rhythmic, deliberate, as if something trapped inside was trying to be heard. His breath caught. He pulled the rear doors open, expecting old tools, maybe animal bones. Instead, he found a single photograph wedged under a crate, a yellow school bus, its windows blacked out, parked in the middle of the tundra. On the back of the photo, scrawled in faded blue ink, was one sentence: "Find what they left behind before the thaw." And then, from the tree line, a whisper answered him. He had come north to disappear. 2 years earlier, everything had collapsed. The marriage, the business, the illusion of control. His name was Nathan Cole, once a mechanic from Portland who fixed other people's engines better than he ever managed to fix his own life. When his brother died in a hiking accident that was never fully explained, Nathan sold what little he had left and drove toward Alaska, chasing silence, or maybe punishment. The van was supposed to be a project, a distraction from grief, but now it stared back at him like an accusation from another century, whispering questions he didn't want to answer. That night, inside a rented cabin near Fairbanks, he laid the photograph on the table beside a single lamp. The school bus in the picture glowed yellow under a snowstorm, its headlights off, its door slightly open, as if waiting. He ran a thumb across the paper and felt the cold there, as if it had stored winter in its fibers. The words on the back, "Find what they left behind before the thaw," wouldn't leave his mind. Who were they? What was left behind? And what thaw was coming? The air smelled of pine resin and diesel. His generator hummed outside like a restless animal. He searched online for missing vehicles, old tragedies, Alaskan disappearances. There were hundreds. A school bus from 1973, gone without a trace. A field trip that never returned. 22 students, one driver, one teacher. Bodies never found. He blinked at the screen, pulse tightening. That number, 73, matched the red mark on the van's map. The realization hit him with the quiet violence of cold water. Maybe this wasn't coincidence. Maybe someone wanted him to find it. But who still cared after all these years? By morning, the storm had passed, leaving behind a silence that hummed in his ears. Nathan spread the torn map across the table, smoothing its creases with trembling hands. The paper felt fragile, almost damp, as if it had been rescued from somewhere it shouldn't have survived. The red circle around 73 sat near a faded line that once marked an old mining route, one long erased from official charts. Next to it, faint pencil scribbles read, 2 hours past the ridge, follow the river until it stops. He traced the path with his fingertip, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing against the edges of the page. He packed a small bag, flashlight, compass, rope, and a flask of whiskey he hadn't touched since his brother's funeral. The van groaned to life after several tries, coughing black smoke into the dawn. Every sound in that frozen valley felt amplified. The crunch of snow under his boots, the whine of wind slicing through pine, the soft hum of tires on ice. He kept glancing at the photograph on the dashboard, the yellow bus almost glowing beneath its layer of frost, as though urging him forward. Halfway along the trail, the road began to vanish. He parked near a cluster of trees where the map's markings ended and stepped out into the endless white. The cold hit him like a warning. For miles, there was nothing, just snow and sky. Then he saw it, a thin line of rust peeking through the ice, half buried, unmistakably curved like the edge of a fender. He knelt, brushing away frost until a symbol appeared, a number 22, stenciled in fading black. His breath hitched. That was the same number of children who had vanished with the bus, and beneath the ice something metallic clicked once, like a lock turning itself. The metallic click echoed through the stillness like a whisper from the ground itself. Nathan froze, every nerve alive. He leaned closer, brushing more snow away, and the glint of a keyhole appeared, old, circular, corroded by decades of frost. The ice around it seemed thicker, almost purposeful, as though something beneath had been sealed deliberately. He tapped it with his knife, and the echo that answered was hollow, deep, not just metal, space, a cavity large enough to hide what? His breath fogged the air, shaping questions he wasn't ready to speak. Then, from the tree line behind him came a sound, a slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps. He spun around, heart pounding. Nothing. Only trees, brittle and black against the white. The silence that followed was worse than any noise. Then he saw them. Boot prints, fresh, not his own, trailing from the road toward where he knelt. Someone else had been here, maybe minutes earlier, or was still watching. He felt the air shift, the cold thickening. He grabbed the map, folded it fast, and slid it inside his jacket. Whatever was buried here wasn't meant for him alone. As he stood, something caught the light, a glimmer near the base of a tree. He approached cautiously and found a small metal tag half buried in snow. It was from the Department of Education, stamped 1973, labeled Property of North River School District. His pulse stumbled. That was the district the missing bus belonged to. He turned it over and saw a smear of red, fresh and wet, not rust. Nathan backed away, scanning the forest. The wind howled again, carrying a low, distorted hum, like an engine idling somewhere distant. But there were no roads here anymore. And then, faintly through the pines, a headlight flickered once. Nathan's flashlight cut a trembling beam through the darkening woods. The temperature had dropped sharply, and each breath rose like smoke, vanishing into the blue-black sky. He followed the single flicker of light that had appeared and then gone, convinced now it hadn't been his imagination. The snow underfoot was uneven, scattered with shards of ice that cracked like glass with every step. He counted his pace, the rhythm steadying his nerves. 1, 2, 3, 4, until the beam of his light hit something metallic again, half hidden beneath a drift. He brushed away the snow and found a broken mirror, shattered, its edges sharp and clean. A faint reflection of his face blinked back, warped and ghost-like. He knelt and noticed tire tracks beside it, wide and deep, but far too preserved to be from 1973. They looked fresh, hours old at most. Someone else had been driving through this forest. He turned his light toward the path the tracks followed and saw in the distance a narrow clearing. A small cabin stood there, its roof collapsed under snow, but a lantern glowed faintly inside. The smell of burning oil drifted through the air, cutting through the pine. Nathan's pulse quickened. Whoever lived there had been close to the site of the buried fender. He stepped closer, each movement deliberate. The snow creaked under his boots like the slow ticking of a clock. He could see the inside of the cabin now. Tools, papers, something moving on the wall. He froze. Pinned there were photographs. Children smiling beside a yellow bus, teachers waving, the date marked at the bottom, October 5th, 1973. Every photo had a red X drawn across each face, all but one, a young boy, unsmiling, staring straight into the lens. The same boy from the photo he'd found inside the van. And the sound behind him whispered again, the crunch of footsteps closer this time. The footsteps stopped just behind him. Nathan turned slowly, pulse hammering in his ears, but the space outside the cabin was empty, only the whisper of wind through dead branches. The lantern inside flickered, throwing frantic shadows against the walls. Then his eyes caught something new. On the table beneath the photos, a radio, its dial faintly glowing. A voice crackled through the static, distorted, rhythmic, repeating a single phrase. The thaw begins in 7 days. 7 days. 7 days. The words froze him where he stood. Someone had set a countdown. He grabbed the radio, twisted the knob. No signal. Only that same message looping endlessly. The number struck him like a memory. The back of the photograph had said, "Before the thaw." He looked around the cabin again and saw a small calendar pinned to the wall. Every date from that month had been crossed out except one, March 17th. That was 7 days from now. His breath caught as realization hit. Whatever was buried under that ice, it was not meant to stay buried much longer. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying a deep groan from the forest. The sound was unnatural, mechanical, almost like metal twisting beneath pressure. He stepped outside and saw a thin crack forming in the ice near the fender he'd uncovered earlier. Steam rose from it, faint but steady, as if something beneath the permafrost was warming, moving. He crouched and placed his hand on the surface. Heat pulsed faintly through his glove. Then the radio in his backpack hissed again, a burst of static, then a voice he didn't recognize. "Nathan Cole, stop digging." He stumbled back, eyes scanning the tree line. No one, only silence. But then, faintly, a red light blinked from the van he'd left miles away. Something, or someone, was already there. Nathan sprinted back through the forest, lungs burning, his flashlight slicing frantic shapes through the dark. The storm had returned, heavier now, swallowing his tracks as fast as he made them. By the time he reached the clearing, the van's red light was still blinking, steady, unnatural, almost like a heartbeat. He slowed, crouching low, scanning the area. The snow around the van was disturbed, scattered in wide arcs as if someone had circled it again and again. He approached carefully, each crunch of ice beneath his boots sounding too loud. Then he saw the message carved into the frost on the windshield. "You're late." He froze. The driver's door was open. Inside, the air felt warmer than it should have, thick with the smell of gasoline and something faintly metallic. The photograph that had been on the dashboard was gone. In its place lay a cassette tape, unlabeled, its reel half unwound. He inserted it into the van's old deck, heart pounding. The tape clicked once, hissed, then a voice, male, tired, deliberate. "They never meant for the bus to be found. The ice was supposed to hold it, but the earth is changing. When the ground breathes again, they'll come back. Don't be here when it happens." The tape ended abruptly with a low hum like distant thunder. He sat there, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe. Who was they? And how did this stranger know his name? The storm howled outside, shaking the van. He looked down and saw something new on the floor, a patch of melted snow revealing metal, etched with the same number from before, 22. He turned off the radio, opened the door, and stepped into the night, his breath clouding. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint engine started, but it wasn't his, and this time it was getting closer. The engine's roar cut through the blizzard, distant, but rising fast. Nathan ducked behind the van, the cold biting through his coat as headlights swept briefly across the tree line. He caught a glimpse, a dark truck, military green, moving slow, scanning the road with a mounted light. No license plate. Whoever they were looking for something, or someone. He crouched lower, heart pounding. When the truck passed, he slipped back inside the van, grabbed his bag, and yanked the key from the ignition. It was time to move, but not away. If they were hunting the truth, then so was he, and now he needed to find it first. He followed the tire marks they left behind, driving with the headlights off, the van rattling over the frozen ground. The forest grew thicker, the air colder, and the road narrower until it ended at a cliff overlooking a white valley. Down below, half buried in the ice, something massive reflected the moonlight, curved metal, long windows, yellow paint. His breath caught. The school bus. It was real. He killed the engine and stared, overwhelmed by the impossible sight. The roof had caved in, but the frame still gleamed faintly, as though the cold had preserved it perfectly. He knew what he had to do. Tomorrow, he'd climb down and uncover whatever was trapped inside that bus. But for now he sat in the van, staring at the frozen graveyard beneath him, the wind wailing through the valley, like the voices of children calling out from the past. He reached for the radio and whispered, "I found it." A static burst answered, then a faint voice, a child's voice, saying, "Don't open the door. Aproveita e conta de onde você está ouvindo, cidade e país, e deixa o seu gostei para essa história continuar chegando a mais gente." Nathan's eyes widened. The radio had never been on, and yet the voice repeated, "Please, don't open it." By dawn, the storm had calmed, leaving the world hushed under a sheet of light. Nathan packed his gear and began the descent toward the valley, each step cracking through layers of snow that seemed to breathe beneath him. The bus lay still, half swallowed by ice, the yellow of its body dull beneath frost. It looked less like a vehicle and more like a fossil, a relic of something that had been alive once and was now waiting to be unearthed. The silence was oppressive. Not even birds dared to break it. His rope hissed against the rock as he lowered himself, the cliff face scraping his gloves raw. When he reached the base, he stood before the wreck. The bus's windows were opaque with frost, its front door frozen shut. He circled it, finding one window cracked open just enough to peek inside. The beam of his flashlight pierced the gloom. rows of seats, a child's backpack still slumped against the floor, and at the back, something wrapped in plastic, neatly stacked. He swallowed hard and pressed closer. Through the fogged glass he saw movement. Faint, impossible, a shadow shifting behind the seats. He jerked back, heart thundering. He forced the door open with a crowbar. The sound was deafening in the stillness, echoing across the valley like a warning. Inside, the air was stale, carrying a faint metallic sweetness, like old blood. The flashlight trembled in his hand as he moved down the aisle, eyes scanning every seat. He reached the back and froze. The plastic bundles were body bags, each tagged with a date, October 5th, 1973. The last one was smaller, a child's size. The tag read, "Unknown." Then his flashlight flickered once, twice, and went dark. Something breathed behind him. Nathan didn't dare move. The air inside the bus had turned heavy, damp, carrying a faint smell of ozone. In the dark, he could hear the soft, uneven rhythm of breathing, too slow to be his own, too close to be imagined. He reached for his lighter, thumb trembling as the tiny flame flared, throwing jagged shadows along the aisle. Every bag, every torn seat, seemed to twitch with the movement of firelight. Then, at the far end, he saw it, a handprint smeared on the glass, fresh and dripping down the frost. Someone else was inside with him. He backed away, every instinct screaming to run, but the door he had forced open earlier was now frozen shut again, a thick layer of frost crawling across the handle like it was growing. The lighter sputtered out. Darkness swallowed everything. And then a whisper, a voice barely audible, childlike, close to his ear. They never left. His heart slammed against his ribs. He lunged toward the window, smashing it with his elbow, shards slicing his jacket. Cold air rushed in like a flood, cutting his breath short. He hauled himself through and fell into the snow outside, gasping, his hands bleeding, his pulse wild. Above him, the bus loomed silent once more. No sound, no movement. But the door slowly creaked open again on its own, revealing the dark interior. Something pale hung from the ceiling, a tag fluttering gently in the wind. He stepped closer and read it by the moonlight. It was written in faded ink. If found, return to North River on before the thaw. He looked up at the mountains. Steam was rising again from the cracks in the ice. Whatever the thaw was, it had already begun, and there was no going back. Nathan climbed back to higher ground, each step a battle against the shifting ice. His fingers burned from cold and blood, but his mind raced faster than his body. Someone had gone to impossible lengths to bury the truth, and to warn anyone who might uncover it. But now, with the thaw spreading across the valley, the buried bus wouldn't stay hidden much longer. He needed proof, something undeniable, before whoever was out there erased it again. From his pack he pulled a small drone, a cheap one he'd used for mapping terrain. He rewired its transmitter, linked it to his camera, and whispered, "Let's show the world." He launched it into the frigid air. The tiny machine buzzed upward, stabilizing over the bus. On his screen he saw everything, the rows of frozen seats, the body bags gleaming under fractured ice, and, in the reflection of the window, movement. A figure standing motionless beside the bus, too tall to be a child, too still to be alive. Nathan zoomed in. The face was obscured, covered by frost or maybe a mask. Then the figure lifted its head slowly, as if sensing the drone's gaze. The feed glitched. Static swallowed the image. When it returned, the figure was gone. Panic clawed at him. He turned to check the valley below. Nothing, just the sound of the wind and the cracking of ice. Then a deep rumble rolled beneath his boots, low and growing. The frozen surface was breaking apart, veins of dark water threading through white. The thaw wasn't natural. Something was heating the ground from below, something mechanical. He packed the drone, his breath ragged. He knew where he needed to go next, the old North River mine marked faintly near the map's red circle, because that's where the heat was coming from. By nightfall, the sky had turned the color of steel. Nathan reached the mouth of the North River mine, a jagged wound carved into the mountainside. The entrance was blocked by a metal gate chained shut, a warning sign almost erased by decades of snow. He broke the lock with his crowbar, the clang echoing into darkness. The smell hit first, sulfur oil, something electrical, humming faintly beneath the rock. He switched on his headlamp and stepped inside. The tunnel walls glistened with moisture, alive with the sound of melting ice. Somewhere deep within, a pulse throbbed, steady, mechanical, unnatural. He followed it down, one step at a time. The deeper he went, the warmer the air grew, and the light dimmed to a reddish glow that seemed to bleed from the walls. Then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, and there it was. The missing bus, or what was left of it, suspended above a pit of cables and steel braces. It had been dragged here, stripped, wired into machines that hummed like breathing lungs. Its frame pulsed with faint light. He approached slowly, the sound of his heartbeat merging with the rhythmic thrum. On the ground lay dozens of folders, plastic tags, and school records. The names matched those of the missing children. Each file stamped "Experiment terminated." His stomach twisted. He reached for one. Lucas Dyer, age 11, the boy from the photo. Inside the file was a drawing, a bus under stars, surrounded by dark hands reaching from the snow. Below it, a note in a child's scrawl. "They said we'll keep the light." The machines suddenly roared to life. The bus's headlights flared, blinding him. A voice crackled from the intercom, the same calm tone from the cassette. "You shouldn't have come here, Nathan." He spun around. Someone was standing behind him, and this time they weren't alone. For a moment, Nathan couldn't breathe. 3 figures stood at the edge of the chamber, silhouettes draped in white suits, faces hidden behind fogged visors. The hum of the machinery drowned every other sound. One of them raised a gloved hand, signaling the others to move closer. "You weren't supposed to find this," the tallest one said, voice calm, distorted through the mask. Nathan's lamp caught the insignia on their suits, the faded emblem of the Alaskan Department of Energy. Not soldiers, scientists. "You think it was an accident?" the voice continued. "The bus didn't vanish, it was taken." Nathan gripped his crowbar, rage and fear boiling together. "You buried 22 children." The nearest figure shook their head. "We preserved them." With a flick of a switch, the chamber lights brightened, revealing rows of glass pods along the wall. Inside each, shapes, small, pale, motionless, floating in amber liquid. Children, perfectly preserved, untouched by time. "They survived the crash," the scientist said. "We tried to save them, but something in that valley changed them first." The hum grew louder, shaking the floor. "Their cells generate heat. They're waking up." Nathan stumbled backward, nausea rising. "You can't keep them like this." The leader tilted their head. "We're not keeping them, we're containing them." A monitor behind the bus flickered to life, showing thermal readings, spikes of red spreading beneath the ice outside. "When the thaw finishes, containment fails." He looked up, realization cutting through the noise. The countdown wasn't about time, it was about temperature. When the valley melted, whatever was under there would be free. The scientist reached toward a control panel. "We'll seal it forever." Nathan stepped between them and the switch, not by burying the truth again. Then the ground split open with a deafening crack, and heat roared up from below. The earth convulsed beneath them, metal screaming as the machinery tore apart. Steam exploded from fissures in the rock, blinding white. Nathan staggered, grabbing the railing as the suspended bus shuddered, cables snapping one by one. The scientists scrambled toward the exit, shouting over the roar. He barely heard them, his eyes fixed on the bus. The headlights blazed again, and inside the shattered windshield, faint shapes began to move. Small hands pressed against the glass from within. The children. Their eyes glowed with the same amber hue as the liquid from the pods, pulsing like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. The lead scientist yelled, "They're not alive as we know it. They're energy now. Get out." But Nathan couldn't